All right, we're live. Wait for a bit till people come in, but yes, we're live. This is, I mean, I was gonna say it's a bit weird, but we had experience of it last year for a bit, so it's okay. So it's okay. But wait for people to join in, of course, after the beautiful chat Terry had with Jesse from True Footy, which is great. But yes, we are live again. Wait for more people to join in, but it's good. It's good being live. I prefer it. You reckon?
Yeah, well, life's different, eh? Where whatever we say, everyone's
Yeah,
listening, eh?
yeah, no, yeah. There's no editing. You can't go back, and Terry can't save our asses if we say something a bit dodgy. But no, all right, let's kick things off. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome back. It is a welcome back, technically. Welcome back to another season of The Rest. I'm your host, Iris Amtakis. I'm joined by Nathan once again this year, and basically, I think I wouldn't say it's self-explanatory, but yeah, we're here again covering anything not Carlton related. So if whenever we lose a game or whenever we do something that just triggers the life out of every supporter, everyone can come to this show and we can just not speak about calm and be very calm and just composed and very chill because the rest of the competition isn't as dramatic and as kind of I don't know bipolar as Carlton is sometimes. But yes, we're back again, Nathan. Thank you very much for joining me again for the year. How are you? How was your off season? How was your pre season?
Look, my off season was fantastic, wasn't it? Because I've said this a couple times. It was the first time I was happy in a while. The first time I could relax and look to the weekend and know that I wasn't gonna either be very sad or just unhappy for the next, 7 days after that. But it was great to be back. And like you said, it's a show that we're not talking about Carlton, which is actually my favorite thing to do. So
Yeah,
works well. Works
just
well.
despite our partisan supportership, if that's even a word, it is great to just not speak about Carlton for a bit, and especially considering the pre or especially considering the preseason that a lot of people think we're having in the obviously the preseason game. No, it's good. It's good to just speak about non-Carlton things. But we're in for a big show, I think. So basically, what this show will be. This obviously got two shows before round one, and then of course every show after the round one will be a review slash preview of the week's football happenings, week's football actions. But yeah, today we'll be going through all 18 clubs and just doing a quick preview. This won't be season predictions. We're not going to be doing ladders and Coleman's. I'll be next week, so we'll do all the headline stuff and where we think Collingwood are going to finish and where we think the Geelong are going to finish next week. But yeah, we're just going to be doing a quick, kind of very diplomatic preview of every club. I think just going to be very just calm and composed about it. But I think let's just crack straight in because there's 18 clubs and knowing us, we're probably going to be here till next week speaking about GWS for half an hour. So let's just crack in and let's go. Let's kick things off with Adelaide. Obviously, let's start top to bottom. Let's yeah. So hello everyone in the chat. So basically, I think I explained it. The rest every club except Carlton. So if we want to just compose ourselves and just not go mental over Carlton, speak about the rest of the AFL, this is what this show is. So yes, let's start with Adelaide. Now I did kind of pre warn you pre-episode or a couple of days ago that I've got some questions, and the first one isn't very original, but the question that I've got for Adelaide is basically where are they? Like where do you see them? Because they are a team that can float in and around various different places in predictions. Kind of a weird list demographic. How do you see them? How would you kind of assess their off-season, pre-season, and their expectations heading into 2023?
Yeah, they're an odd one because they showed glimpses in 2022. I mean, most teams do down that bottom, and they're going to show a little bit of what they're capable of. I don't think they'll make a significant leap, just purely off, the list and their experience. I don't think they have what it takes to challenge at all. I definitely think they'll be that team who's ultra competitive, that will always give you a game and probably won't get bashed as much as they did last year in a couple of games where they got blown out. I think it will be pretty hard to beat them, and especially when you go over to Adelaide, it's always a task to win in Adelaide, so that they've always got that advantage, if nothing. So it will be a very interesting season for Adelaide. Hard to really see if they're going to go up and down, but in terms of a forward line, it's dangerous. Back line, probably their weak spot, and the midfield goes well. So it's just pretty well balanced, competitive team, whether they challenge or not. I think we'll find that out pretty quickly if they're going to be legit or not.
Yeah, yeah. I think obviously the big kind of talking point, kind of I wouldn't say storyline heading into it, is obviously Isaac Rankin for me. I think him, whether or not he plays the forward line, on the wing, in the middle, he's their kind of star man now in a sense. I think the big that big acquisition. It's going to be interesting to see, but they do remind me a bit of Carlton in like 2017. That like you don't really know where they are. They've got some really good elements, some poor elements, some good older players who can kind of carry that burden in a sense and carry that leadership. But then obviously they've got the kids who, I mean, after the debacle in which 2017 was, and the back end of that, they've kind of nosedived and have really been a team that's rebuilt. Whether or not their rebuild has been successful in a sense, I don't know, but you're going to be looking at a couple of players to step up, and I mean, there is a lot of pressure on Isaac Rankin, isn't there?
Yeah, well, considering the hype that was around him when he was coming, he's a very good player, and I think he will fit into this team well, especially alongside small forward. You got McHenry as well. That's very dangerous. I guess it will be sharing the workload in that forward pocket area. If he's gonna stand up the most, if it's gonna be very balanced, and I think if they work out that chemistry in that forward line, it could be very deadly at times. So he'll definitely add to Adelaide. Definitely can't make him worse. You wouldn't think, based off
You'd
their
hope not.
experience and their list at the moment.
Yeah, you'd hope that, and especially considering what they gave up for him. I don't know exactly what it was, but it definitely was definitely something of value. Put it that way. So, yeah, he's going to be a real kind of. I think if he does well and if he hits the ground running, I think Adelaide will kind of kick on into the season and really build. I know we'll do our season predictions next week, but if we're going to give a rough estimate, I think we'll do a rough estimate. Where do you think the Crows are going to be in 6 months, 7 months time, even?
It's tough. I mean, I'm looking. They've got 6 players that have played above 100 games. So experience-wise, if they lose a couple of those guys, you could probably see it going south very quickly. I think they'll be not in the top 10, but I think they'll be in that 11th to 13th spot. I just couldn't see them staying lower unless teams just get significantly better. But we say that every year, and we say 10 teams could contend for the flag, and we quickly realize that's not actually going to happen. That is just close because a lot of teams aren't good, and that's just making it close. So,
Yeah,
no, I think they'll be good, competitive, but just probably not enough to reach the 8.
yeah. I think they'll be a little bit worse than what you're saying. I just think it's 1 year too early. I think if they can, I think they just got to be competitive again. If they can be competitive again, I know that's probably not what Adelaide supporters want to hear, but if they can be competitive and get the best out of their young players, then I think that's good for them. I think that's where they are, in my opinion. I think slightly below that 13th, 16th to 13th. If they don't finish bottom 4, that's great, but I don't think they'll be challenging for the 8. So that's the Crows. Let's move on. Let's go down and let's go to a team that has been. I mean, we can speak. I reckon we could have a very, very long conversation about this club, but the Lions. And I think the question is, are they a true threat? Because we all know, obviously, last year they got over that finals dark. Of course, we all know countless seasons previous to last year they fell short when everyone thought they were going to take that next step. And last year it seemed like they did take that next step. And with the acquisitions, of course, Ashcroft and the likes, it's like, are they? The talent on the pitch is undeniable. The talent on the field is undeniable. It's just up here. They've got this mental block, which if they did really overcome it last year, will allow them to be a very, very, very dangerous team heading into this season.
It's so hard to talk about them personally. Well, I think I'm not going to track back on what I said and deny what I said, but I thought last year was really their last shot. And look, I think they'll be able to contend another year. And like you said, I thought mentally that would be mentality that would probably stop them from actually winning anything from now on in the future. I thought the whole thing about Brisbane is their game plan is not transferable to other grounds. So you've, as in the Gabba game plan, then such a small ground, it's hard to take that out. But they showed they could. They beat Melbourne, so that was something. But I don't remember thinking Brisbane were the better team in that Melbourne game. They were getting dominated up until half time, and it was more Melbourne letting down their guard than I think Brisbane stepping it up in that game, because you saw it the week before, or even weeks before Melbourne did it against Collingwood, Sydney. They just fell apart. So I'm not sure it was a Brisbane thing that they turned up, and we saw it the week after against Geelong that they just dismantled them. And Geelong were great, obviously, won the premiership, but I just don't know. Talent is something, but being able to execute consistent football with talent is also another thing. And they got great assets. I got to deal a lot with Will last year at Sandy, and he's a terrific player. Personally, I just don't think he's your Cripps, Fife. I'd say he's on par with your Tom Mitchells. Like, he will find the football everywhere. Very talented, knows how to use it well. But I don't think he's going to be necessarily a game winner by any mean. He just adds to what Brisbane already have in that midfield with Lockie Muir as well. So those two collectively will be terrific. But that's the summary I'll give for right now.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, the talent, and I think it's pretty obvious that the talent is undeniable, right? Of course, the talent even last year was undeniable, and then adding Ashcroft, Gunston, and Dunkley, that midfield now all of a sudden becomes very, very, very dangerous, and a midfield that we've seen. I mean, it's quite funny how Dunkley came from the Dogs, who in their own right had a very, very good midfield for like last year and the year before, but it just couldn't quite click. Do you think that? I mean, well, do you think it will kind of click? I think it. I don't think these acquisitions are going to create mass upheaval. I do think these types of players can just kind of fit in seamlessly in a sense. But to me, it's whether or not they put too much emphasis on one area of the ground in comparison to the other, in my opinion, which is something that I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if it's going to be a detriment. If I don't know if it's a detriment adding so much talent in one area of the pitch in comparison to the other. Of course, Gunston came in. I think they have moved Rayner to the half back, which, in my opinion, is I'm not a fan of that, because I think he can be one of the most
No,
dangerous kind of. Do you agree or disagree with my opinion there?
no, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just doesn't fit.
Yeah, I think he could be one of the most dangerous mid forwards in the game. We saw last year against St Kilda, I think it was, kick three off his own boot and kick 3 goals last quarter off his own boot, won in the game. So it's tricky. It's going to be tricky, but I think that mental block in which their constant finals losses and their underperformance in finals has given them, in a sense, or that mental block because of that. I think they got over it last year. Granted, it didn't end the way that it did, but I've got them going deep. I've got them going very, very deep. Top four for me is the bare minimum expectation. What about you?
I couldn't see them finishing out of the top four, but I don't think they'll make a grand final unless they play some finals in Brisbane. I don't think you have to take them out of Brisbane, and I just don't see them being able to compete with someone like Melbourne on a prelim stage, or a Geelong, or even, I'm just saying, throwing Freo out there. They have to go to Perth. I just don't see them being able to. It's just that they just don't really know how to win, like consistently win under pressure. And if I had to name me a game they did that apart from Melbourne, I mean, they
Would you
didn't. I
consider?
don't remember
Would
them
you? Would you consider the
knocking
week? Would you consider the week before a pressure game against Richmond?
against Richmond. Well, yes, but that's at their home ground, and they've beaten them there before. They've done that in a final, so that was nothing new to them. And I think at least with Melbourne, it was half time. It was a bit like, what have they got to lose at this point? You're down 4 goals, go for it. Whereas with Geelong, they were straight away under pressure, and they couldn't come back from it. So look, they'll go deep. You can't deny that they have the talent to go that far. It's just, I just think things have to happen for them proven over the last couple of years, things have to happen very well for them to get that far and make a grand final.
So, I think it was spoiling a little bit, but where do you have them? I've got them top four minimum. Where do you say them?
I think they would. I think they could finish first in like regular season. But finals is a whole different beast. That's
Yeah.
why it's like hard to judge how like just a general prediction of where they will be by the end of start of October. Like couldn't tell you because I just think finals is just so different, and they seem to become a different team in finals. But I think they'll finish top two in the normal season.
So you think last year was like a little bit of an anomaly in a sense? They didn't get over that mental hurdle.
I don't know if they will get over it this year.
Interesting.
I don't
Interesting.
know.
Like I said, I reckon we could speak about this name for ages because there just is so much
Yeah.
to speak about. We didn't even cover everything, but there's 16 other teams that we need to cover. So let's move on. And I know this show isn't about Carlton, but for completion's sake, and because my OCD will drive myself mental if we don't speak about every club, let's go briefly, right? Briefly, not too much because I don't want to stress myself out even more. Um, it's gotta happen now, right? Doesn't it? We've got like surely we've got to break that, kind of grab that brass ring in a sense.
Well, yes, in a way, I think it's got to be now in terms of just cracking into finals, right? But
Yeah,
I think about it this way: it's like next year they'll have the exact same list because the only player who's probably going to exit in terms of age is Ed Kerno. So you're going to have the same list. But the thing is, if you don't make finals this year, the next year is just going to be, you feel like it's just not going to happen because the mentality would be completely screwed by that point. So, yes, it does have to be now in terms of making finals. I still think there's still years, like a couple of years before this list loses its potential in a way. So it's, wouldn't like to talk about it in all honesty,
yeah.
but we're here,
Let's
aren't
move
we?
on. Here we are here. I don't want to. I don't want to speak about it. I really don't. As much as I love this team with all my heart, I struggle. I really do. But it like I think I'm just going to go into this season with just no expectations. Whatever happens, happens. Have like so anything positive that happens is a bonus. Anything negative that happens, it's like oh well, it's Carlton type thing. But like I'm assuming top eight, right? Surely.
If you say.
Oh, don't do this to me,
We'll
mate.
see what happens. We'll see what
don't,
happens, eh? We'll
don't
see
do
what
this to me.
happens.
Don't do this to me. All right, let's move on because
Whatever you say.
yeah, let's not do this. I'm already getting stressed. Let's move on to a team that that's probably going to cause me even more stress. Speaking about, and I am being a little bit facetious in the question that I'm asking, but was it luck last year for the Pies?
Okay, well, I'm going to start because I know you'll finish as well. So, look, yes, it was luck. Like, there was elements of luck within it, but I just couldn't see a team like Collingwood getting significantly worse. Like, as if every game that they won by under a goal would just turn into a loss this season. Like, I don't think it's that different, right? They won those games. Some of those games they won by, a goal. It wasn't a close game the whole time, right? The team who was losing came back and made it competitive. I don't think they'll be as good. It's hard to see them being any better. I don't think in the off season they added many assets to improve them. I don't think Dan McStay is really going to improve them. Same with Billy Frampton. They're
Tom
two
Mitchell?
players that just. Sorry, I did forget about Tom Mitchell. Yeah, he's someone that can improve him, 100%. And I'm sure Nick Dacos will roll into the midfield at some point. Halfback is good for him. He does well in that position, but he was brought up in the development pathway as a midfielder, right? So that's where he's going to play eventually. So they'll have a very good midfield. I don't know. I don't think it was luck. I just also don't think it wasn't luck.
Yeah,
I just they did well to win those games. I
yeah.
just don't think it will happen again like it did, but I think they'll still be very competitive.
Yeah, I think Albert it's an nail on head here. I think both last season and this season were very competitive, and or last season was, this season will be, and I think Collingwood have been the beneficiaries of that because games have been so close and because teams have been so close in terms of quality and ability. It does come down to those fine margins, and obviously I say was it like, but in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I I think it was, but you make your own luck. I'm a very big proponent of people don't just get lucky. Like footy's not a lottery, right? As much as I would want to say that about their season last year, it's not, right? They obviously were doing things right throughout the year, obviously, right? But I just don't I just can't see it happening again. And the reason why is because statistically it can't, like it just cannot happen again, right? It would be the biggest statistical anomaly in the history of sport if they carried on this form. And we saw in finals their brand didn't really hold up, right? Their brand wasn't exactly, it wasn't a style of football that blew teams away in the finals like the Richmonds did, or like even the Dogs did in 2016, right? It was a brand of football that relied on games being close. And we saw even in the Sydney game, not the final, the round 2021, whatever game it was, when that game wasn't close, Sydney were able to keep them at arm's length, and Collingwood really didn't have an answer. So was it like? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's either going to go one or two ways. We're either going to be sitting here in 6 months' time and I'm going to be eating my words, or I'm going to be the most. I'm going to be bragging more than anyone else on planet Earth because I would have predicted this. But if we had to put a number, top eight, bottom 10, 12th to 15th, first to fourth, what are we talking for the Pies?
Fifth to eighth,
Bottom half of the eight, yeah,
not top four. Yeah,
not top
not
four.
top four. No.
I mean, last year they only made it because of, we all know why they made it. So I don't think that circumstance will happen again this year. You'd hope not, anyway. But I don't want to spoil my season predictions, but I think it goes without saying that they will almost definitely not be as good as what they were last year. And if they are as good as what they were last year, then I think any sort of analyst, any sort of statistics, any algorithm needs to be picked up and thrown in the bin because it needs to just completely revamp the way that they analyze sport. Because it, like, I don't want to jinx it, but it can't happen again, right? It can't,
Yeah, well,
surely.
look, if they are, see this is, if it happens again and they're better, this team is contending for a premiership, is what you're trying to say, because they will be winning by more, right? They won't just
Yeah,
be winning by a bit. So hence they're going to be like contending, properly contending.
yeah, but would they? Because they won. How many games did they win last year? Would it matter about how many games or the margin in which the amount of games they won it by, or the actual amount of games they won?
Yeah, well, I
How would
guess.
you how would you judge it? Here we go. Here's a good question. How would you judge improvement for the Pies this year? Would it be winning? Would so if I don't know how many games the Pies won last year, but say Collingwood won 5 or 6 less games than they won last year, but of those games that they won them by 5 goals, 6 goals, 7 goals, 8 goals, and they were really putting away teams. Would you classify that as an improvement? Because I certainly would.
Well, it depends who the opposition is, right? Because if they're doing it against the teams you expected them to beat by a lot, then you would sort of look at it and think, well, it's sort of expected. But if it's against those teams like Melbourne that they knocked off, uh, I can't remember. Like it was so many now. You know, if even for Carlton, for example, if they're knocking off these teams by a decent margin, you're thinking, and losing to the probably the teams they should beat, well, then you'd probably think, okay, well, they're serious for the teams that they need to beat. Whereas it was sort of like you just didn't really know if they were probably going to get contend, or their game style was literally just holding up against everyone.
Well, you say that, but they were 5 goals down to North at three-quarter time, and
I do forget
they
that.
yeah, like, and they lost to West Coast. So it's like, but then again,
Yeah,
they dominated some teams, like they dominated GWS, for example. Like that game was never close. It got close
yeah,
because that's the way footy goes, right? Momentum, right? They dominated GWS, but they got dominated by North for 3 quarters. So it's like they're just so confusing. They're just so confusing. But you have them fifth to eighth. I don't want to spoil anything, but I've got them between fifth and 13th. There you go. There's a broad range, so you don't know where exactly I've got them. There you go. Let's move on. And let's go from a team who, as Carlton supporters, we hate to a team that we potentially hate even more. But the fact that they are a little bit of a rabble makes it slightly more bearable. Let's go to the Bombers. Is he the answer? Quick, just I want a yes or no for this one, and then we'll elaborate. Is he the answer? Yes or no?
What a question, honestly. Is Brad the answer? Is Brad himself?
He's Brad, yes. Just him.
Yes or no? I'll say no. I'll say no.
Right. What are your thoughts? Because I don't really think I've thought about them that much, because I think they are in just a period of let them figure it out. Like, let them just do something, and then we'll see how they react to what they did, because they're in the definition of a transition, in my opinion.
They're just odd because I don't think the coach is important, and of course it's going to make a big difference, but like their culture is just awful. Like, it's really bad. Like, even just watching the games, you just sort of think like these players don't really seem connected. And it felt like the new draftees that were coming in had the most energy in that team. Like, and I was like, well, that's a little concerning.
Well,
But
your
the senior
boy
group
will
is,
your boy will Setterfield dominated in the preseason.
And look, I love Setterfield, but if he's dominating, look, he didn't dominate. He was playing well, but he did play pretty well, which I think is slightly concerning because Will is pretty on and off. But look, I just compare him to even just Carlton. As much as our culture was also awful, we hadn't had anything to live off. Like, we were just really bad for a while, and could say we still are, but whereas Essendon have actually had glimpses where it looks like they're going to like go from just making finals and then like they'll contend the next year, and they just don't do anything. So I think like it's a very, I wouldn't say toxic. I just don't think there's like any hope within that group. Like, I don't actually think they know what they're playing for anymore. Even if this year is just like a transition year, how do you know they've succeeded? Because they could go and make finals this year, and then you could go back to the start next year. So they're just very odd. I just don't think there's really, or they can look at it and think, well, we've actually got no expectations, so let's go for it. Which have actually been the years they've probably made the 8, just based off because no one expects anything from them because they've missed finals the year before. So I don't expect much.
Yeah, well, that was 2021, that wasn't it for them? And I think that 2021 year, I think it's similar to Collingwood in 2022. Wait, no, 2021. Yeah, I think it's similar in terms of like, did Essendon deserve to make finals that year? Because they got there, they had a pretty good run. I think they won maybe their last 6 of 2021 to get into it. The quality of opposition they got in those final 6 games weren't great. If I'm remembering correctly, if I'm wrong, please correct me. And then of course they lost to the Dogs. Obviously that season was here, there, and everywhere, right? But do you think that was maybe a bad thing for them? Because they were I think they are in a position where they needed to rebuild. Obviously, bringing Rutten in, obviously a project style coach. He's not like a coach to come in and fix everything straight away. And I think making finals might be one of the worst things for them, because it gave them the expectation of, oh, we're actually a good side, and then maybe they actually weren't. Whereas now they need a total reset. And I think bringing in a coach like Brad Scott, who is, and of course, the complete upheaval that happened in the back end of the season, and how we all know what happened, and it was a debacle, right? And as Carlton supporters, we can speak off experience. We know what it feels like. So we can't exactly poke fun. But do you think now it's the season where they might defy expectations, like you said, because there is no expectations on them? Or do you think there is expectations on them?
Well, just back to your point. From memory, I think they only beat one team in the top eight that in
I
2021.
think they might have, yeah.
It's like that was probably half the problem that they got to finals and they sort of hadn't actually beaten. I think Bulldogs was the team they did beat from memory. Yeah, they did
They
beat
might
them.
have, yeah.
That was the team they did beat. But look, not winning a final doesn't help, but still making finals is something. They just seem to never build on it.
Yeah.
And then what you just said, yeah, I think there is expectation, and just in the sense that like now they got rid of Rudden, so it's like there's one expectation. It's like you got rid of him, so what did you bring him in? Like show this coach actually
Yeah.
makes an improvement, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah, no, I think there's expectation, but more just so that whatever Brad Scott's doing is actually like showing, and even if they're losing, like it needs to be very evident because I
Yeah.
don't think this team's gonna. I couldn't see them challenging for the top eight. I mean, they do
I don't
once
think
in a
they
while
will.
pull something out, but they have to show that like something is sustainable. That
Yeah.
whatever they're playing, whatever style they're playing, is actually sustainable with Brad and that playing group.
Yeah. I agree. 100%. There needs to be some signs of progress. Now, obviously, with that, where do you see them? Because I don't see them challenging for the eight. I don't think they're there personally. I think they'll be bottom six, bottom seven.
We'll see. I've done my ladder prediction, which I won't share till next week. So I'm actually going to look at it and just give you the range as a preview, just
Yeah,
so
that's
I
why.
don't have
That's
to
why.
just think off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's why I gave Collingwood fifth to 13th before, so no one knows.
Uh, my prediction for them is 13th to 16th.
Yeah, I guess we're similar in that respect. I think they'll be okay, yeah, as long as they don't get smashed. Let's move on, and I think we need to be getting a hurry on because it's half an hour and we're five clubs in. So that's, I mean, I literally said this to you before we started filming. There's no way we're going to keep this under an hour, but let's rattle through. Let's go quick fire. Freo, the bridesmaid forever, it seems, haven't been able to grab that brass ring. Obviously, we all know their premiership drought. Can they now turn the tide and become that team? Of course, a couple of outs, Griffin Logue, Darcy Tucker as well, I believe. But they did add Jaeger Amira, Rory Lobb as well, another out. So some list changes. They had obviously Luke Jackson in as well. There you go. There's another one I forgot. So yeah, some pretty big list changes for a side last year that went, for me, just went completely under the radar, just did what they had to do. Very good in Perth for the most part, and did what they had to do in terms of when they came to Melbourne. They beat the D's in Melbourne, didn't they? And of course they came from behind against the Dogs in that first final. Fell to the Pies, which, considering where they ended up, isn't exactly the worst result. But where do you see them? Do you see them bolting or sliding or maintaining, plateauing in a sense?
I've always liked Freo. Like
Yeah,
I thought they were, and I said this last night to you. I said Freo is just a team who no one actually spoke about the fact that they had got into finals when it happened. Like
yeah,
they just were winning. Like, and no
yeah,
one actually talked about it. I couldn't see them getting worse. I think they'll stick around that sort of. I'll jump ahead. I think they'll be around that third to fifth bracket. I think they've got the talent, but I think what last year's final series has just told me, and even like I said with Brisbane, like I just predicting a team's regular season and finals is so different because like Melbourne, you can assume are going to do really well in the regular season, and that's what they did, and then finals they just fell apart.
yeah,
Which is sort of what I feel like will be the case with Freo, is that I think they'll be very strong during the regular season. I couldn't see many teams going over to Perth and beating them. Then they sort of established that last year. No one really went over and beat them convincingly apart from Melbourne. Melbourne was the only team who really went over there and just killed them. But I couldn't. I just come finals time. It's the whole thing of like you take that team out of Perth in finals, and we saw that against Collingwood. It's just a whole different ball game, and I don't
yeah,
know if they just can compete against really like hostile environments outside of Perth. But regular season, like I said, I couldn't see them being bad. I couldn't see they'd have to really fall off injury wise just to have a really tough staggered season. But I think they'll do well.
yeah. I think it's similar to Brisbane in the way that you're kind of looking at them. Obviously I think the list changes are going to be a big part of it. Of course, with the addition of Jaeger, we assume Fife is going to be playing forward majority, which is going to be interesting to see. I do think that if they can lock down that Western Australian fortress, that Optus Stadium fortress, which I think they do have a pretty good track record at doing, if they can win all but one maximum of their games at home, they'll pick up some games away, and they should put them on away. They should put them on their way. They can get a home final. They can potentially even get a home double chance, which I doubt they would. I think there are teams better than them. But if they can get that home final, win it, I think the experience from last year will hold them in good stead. You've got them third to fifth. I would have to agree. Maybe I'll put a little bit further down. I reckon bottom half of the eight, bottom maybe fourth at a push, but fourth to eight, fourth to eighth. I think they're safe in there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Let's move on and let's go to the reigning premiers. Too old, too slow, are they, or are they just going to keep on keeping on? I know your true thoughts about the Cats, so I won't ask you those. But yeah, are they? Is it like kind of they've had their moment in the sunset, and they're just kind of pass the baton on, or do you think there is a potential dynasty building?
Yeah, I couldn't see it happening again, and not because they won't be competitive. I just the hunger probably is gone for a lot of them. Apart from the new kids, like what have they got to strive for? Because even like a dynasty would probably not be sustained. If it's not like it's this year, and then will it happen again? Probably not. I just couldn't see teams getting any like getting worse and Geelong getting better. I think they're only going to catch up to Geelong just purely based off age. We said that last year that age would kill
Yeah,
them, but now you've got age plus the whole thing of the back. Like they've done it now. Like
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure Dangerfield wants a back to back, but will he be fussed? No, he's got what he wants. So
yeah, yeah. I
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to see him being bad.
yeah,
You just have to have him in your top four,
yeah,
no matter
yeah.
what.
Yeah, they're not going to be bad. They're not going to be bad. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if like Collingwood came out round one and dismantled them, and then we dismantled them in round two. Like I would be very very surprised. I think I don't think they're going to be as good as what they were last year. I do think because they were so kind of fixated, and because it was such a mental block of winning that grand final. Of course, we all know there's troubles in prelims, and grand finals as well. Because they finally got that, I think they are going to be like, we got it now. Who really cares? Like Danger's got it. He's got his flag. He's got what he's always wanted. I mean, all these players who have gone through heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak, despite perennially being very, very good, just not the best. Last year they were the best, and I just don't think they're going to have that same fight. But I would put them in my top four. I think you would as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's move on to the Gold Coast, and this is once again another team which I feel like we could potentially speak about for quite a long time. But they've once again perennially, I think them and Freo are kind of a little bit in a similar position in terms of they've always been that little bit that inch and a half away. Can they now make the jump? Can they push and really make their first final series in the franchise's history, which is pretty crazy.
I'm going to be very short based off time. No, they can't. They can't win out of Gold Coast, and that's enough. That's genuine. That's it. Like on to you now. That's it. They just
Okay.
don't win outside the Gold Coast. And even if they won all 12 game, 11, 12, 11 games, whatever in the Gold Coast, they're not going to win all 12, 11 games in the Gold Coast because Sydney will beat them round one. So no, they just don't win outside of it, and it's enough to keep them out. That's their problem, and that's the thing of not having a big fan base outside of Gold Coast.
Okay. Okay. I'll be a little bit more optimistic for any Sun supporters watching this or who might be listening to this in the future. I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be fine. I think Ben King coming back is good. I think last year you were relying on Levi Casbolt a little bit too much as someone who watched him his entire career. You don't really want to be doing that with all due respect to Levi. But I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be good. Last year they did have a very, very good injury record. I think that midfield Fordham, if that's even a word, of Wits. I think it might have been Wits, Miller, Anderson, Real. I think those were the four. I think those four missed like 2 games between them for the whole season, something along those lines, which I don't think they're going to sustain. So I think they will be. I think they'll plateau, but I think they'll be better in some parts and worse in some parts. I just, you know what, I can say they're making the eight. I can genuinely say they're making the eight. I'll put them 7th to 11th.
Well, let me clarify. I don't think they'll be bad. I rate their list very highly. They've got great talent. They just simply can't win out of Gold Coast, and that's all it is. That's all it takes to not make finals. Those are games they need to win, and you could argue if they'd won some of those games outside of Melbourne, they were pretty competitive everywhere they went. They didn't get. I don't think they got smashed at all. I can't remember. But like they beat good teams in Gold Coast. Like they don't struggle to beat really good sides, but then they go over, and that's the thing. Let's turn Carlton Collingwood into Carlton Gold Coast, and Gold Coast had kicked the first 2 goals of the fourth quarter. You met with silence, right? There's nothing to build you up. They're building off their own energy. If that energy dies on the field, it's going to make them struggle. But I agree. Just double checking where I put them. Yeah, 7 to 11.
There you go. And then there you go. I guess we'll wait and see. Now let's move on to the second. Should we call them? Do we still call them expansion teams? I think we do. Do they? Is that unfair?
Yeah,
but yeah,
you might as well. I mean, they're there. Thereabouts.
Yeah, they're there, and I think the potential laziness in my question kind of sums up my thoughts on the GWS Giants. Who knows? Who knows? Because I don't. Because I really don't. Nathan, I'm just going to throw it to you because I've got nothing.
Well, I thought their list was going to make finals last year. Like I was confident. Like I was confident that was a 7th or 8th ranked team. And like you look at their list and it's actually still
it's not bad.
Not stacked, but it's not bad, right?
It's not bad. Yeah, they've got talent.
But it's a sort of the same thing as Gold Coast. Like they're not going to Perth. They're not going to Adelaide and winning. I mean, they beat Adelaide there last year, but they don't do it consistently. They don't go over and beat teams consistently, and they struggle in their own stadium. And it's always, I don't know. They've got a lot of youth that just probably won't want to be there come the midway of the season if they're not doing well. So
we've seen. They are the Exodus club of the AFL. I don't have anything, to be honest, for them. I think, obviously, no Hopper Taranto is going to be... I actually think it'll be not bad for them to, like, actually finally rebuild properly and, like, reinvigorate their list. I think massive responsibility is going to fall to, like, obviously Tom Green was very good last year. Lockie Ash as well, these players. So, yeah, I don't think they'll be that good, with all due respect. I've got them... I know exactly where I've got them. I'll go 18th to 15th.
Yeah, and I'm the exact same.
Yeah. Another. Let's move on to another club who's going to be thereabouts. Hawthorn. Any Mitchell magic to maybe salvage something, because they're obviously the unsociable Hawks are back by all accounts. That's been a directive from the coach's box to be a little bit nasty on the field, which I don't mind. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with them. I saw on Fox Footy when they were doing their season preview, I think 3 of the panel members had them bottom 4, and one of them had them just missing out on the 8. So I think that's a big scope as to the expectations of the Hawks. Young list, no real star. Of course, they did lose, obviously, Jaeger and Mitchell, which has left their midfield quite depleted. I don't think there is a real player, like a standout player for them, which may be a good thing. Maybe they can actually develop as a team.
Yeah, the issue with Hawthorn is that a lot of teams owe them for what they did for the last 10 years. Well, I say 10 years, for the period I'm talking about, 08 to 18. A lot of teams owe them. So teams won't take them lightly.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
They're going to win. They're going to have to earn their wins. Yeah, it's just a list. you just couldn't really see doing amazingly. Even if they click, I just don't think their best will be able to beat, a lot of other teams' worst at the same time. At least the top teams, their worst, I don't think Hawthorn will still be able to beat at their best. I think they're another one. They're sort of like probably just a lower version of Adelaide, where I couldn't see them turning up and getting thumped. They'll be thereabouts. They're just sort of there to make the numbers this year, not in a bad way, but
Yeah.
they're lucky where there's no expectations as well for them. I feel like
Yes.
there's not.
Yes, I agree. Once again, if I could relate it to anything, it's Carlton 2018, 2017. Just go out and play football. Maybe even 2016. Just go out and play football.
The 2-20 Carlton from 2018.
Yeah, I don't think there's many teams that are that bad, but I think we hold the crown for that. But I don't think they'll be that bad. They'll be okay, and I think the fact that they're Hawthorn as well helps. Like big crowds, MCG, the kind of prestige and the honor that club carries. I say that Carlton did go 2-20, so it may not mean all that much, but you'd like to think that they will hold that club and that badge and those colours with a little bit more, with some dignity to not embarrass themselves. I do think the list is quite talented. I just think it is very raw. If you had to put them, I've got them 13th at a push, and I think they could even win the wooden spoon if they're very unlucky.
I have them at 16th to 18th.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's move on to the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's go back to some good clubs. Let's go to Melbourne, and of course, it's going to be Grundy. There you go. Do you like my very very original wordplay? I don't think that's ever been done before. It's elite. Does it work? Can it lead them to a premiership? Of course, it's arguably the most, maybe not the biggest marquee signing, but definitely one of them over the off season. The dynamics is going to change. The ruck dynamics is going to be very different because despite Luke Jackson being there last year, Grundy and Jackson are different ruckmen. Neither Gawn or Grundy can play full forward time. What does it mean for someone like a Ben Brown or someone like that? It's a lot of questions to be asked. And of course, their season last year started very, very well, 12 and zip, I'm pretty sure. And then they fell away. Obviously, going straight sets was very disappointing in the manner in which they did, losing to the Swans, at the G, which was disappointing. And then, of course, Brisbane, which was probably even more disappointing. Can they have a little bit of a resurgence? I think they're definitely one of the challenges for the season, personally.
Well, I'm going to just start back with Gawn and Gundy. Yeah, no, I agree, because the issue with Gawn is you could probably chuck him just like full forward, but like genuinely full forward, like as
in the goal
deep
square
as you can get, like in the goal square, because he can't kick, really. He's not a good kick. He'll kick that one odd one. He actually is pretty clutch, but otherwise... He's not very good. Yeah. He's not a very good kick.
He's not reliable.
That's the issue. Yeah, he's not reliable. So that's the thing with Gawn. You can't really put him in the forward line. It's just interesting. I guess they probably worked on rotations and how they're going to balance them out. It can't make them worse by any means, I don't think. Yeah. I guess another talking point as well is they've had a very heavy preseason from what we've heard talks wise, that fitness wise they're just raring to go. But then it comes back to, how long can you maintain that? Is that sustainable? Which last year wasn't.
Yeah, 12 and 0. So it's like...
So it started well and they never ended. That's the thing. Well, I think you did see that endurance-wise, because we go back to that Collingwood game, that Brisbane game. Like, they just came out of the blocks firing and then fell off.
Maybe that's the prerogative for the endurance heavy and the fitness heavy preseason is started 12 and 2, and then every game was kind of a microcosm of their season. Started really well, and then falling away. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I assume it would.
Yeah. Well, they should be there at the end of this. I think they should be there in the last game of the season. But like I said, it's another team. They'll be a beast in regular, but finals. You just can't tell. It's so hard to tell.
Yeah. I think it is. Obviously, we had the comment before. I think it is a very competitive season, especially in finals. Anyone can beat anyone. I think this season, if you finish in the 8, as long as you don't scrape in, if you are in the 8 and deserve to be in the 8, I genuinely think anyone can beat anyone. I don't think there's going to be a team like Geelong were last year that are just miles ahead of everyone, especially in finals. So, yeah, I've got them top 4, top 3 even. I assume the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Top 3.
Let's go. Let's go from the bottom to the top, back to the bottom. I mean, I say to the rescue. I mean, they're going to need a lot of saving, to be honest, because a lot of not great things are happening around North Melbourne at the moment, both on and off the field. So you just hope they don't get killed every single week, right? That's got to be the main thing. No wooden spoon, or even get the number 1 pick. Tank. They need as many picks as they can get. No, Where do you see an immediate impact from Clarko? And do you see that kind of new manager bounce, which is a term used in the other football? Do you see that kind of happening, or do you think it's just going to be that the list just isn't there right now? Of course, we learnt Ben Mackay will be out for the first month and a bit of the season, which is disappointing for them because he's a very, very crucial player in an area of the field where they struggled a lot with last year.
Yeah, look, I don't think Clark is going to show like immediate on-field improvements, but I think from a mindset point, he would at least keep that group confident consistently. I think they're going to get belted occasionally. Their list isn't that good. It just hasn't improved much, and great pickups in the off season, like very good pickups, and probably the best pickups in terms of any club. Those kids, Wardlaw, Sheasel, there's another one, Murray kid, Braden George, like all very good, talented kids. They just, they'll probably take 1 or 2 years to really, really dominate, But it's actually interesting if anyone hasn't watched. If you go to North's YouTube channel, they're doing like a inside type of documentary, in the rooms, and it's quite interesting to hear what they're saying and how Clarko's addressing them. And it's a very this is the start of a new North Melbourne.
Yeah.
Which is just good for the team to hear. It's like, well, when
it's
the
cliche.
team's getting belted, right?
Yeah. It's the same as the old
North
one.
Melbourne? Yeah.
It's the same as the old one, yeah.
I just couldn't see him getting better. They're just going to sort of stay around the mark. He'll do what he wants to do with them, and they'll either come out winning a few. I reckon a pass mark for them is winning. I don't know how many they won last year. I'd say 3 or 4 more games than they won last year is probably a pass mark.
More than what they won last year.
I can't remember. I don't know.
So last year they won 2 games.
2.
And 1 was against West Coast.
I thought they were okay. Yeah, I'd still say 2 or 3 games more. 2 or 3 games more.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I think that's a pretty good pass mark. I think the list is good talent-wise, just not developed and not built for AFL standard yet. Managed coach obviously is elite in terms of his tactical nous and his ability to coach the team is obviously very good. I just think, just a couple of seasons too early. But we'll see glimpses. They might be a little bit of a... I disagree. I don't think they'll get smashed. I don't think we'll see them get punked by 100 points. I don't think Clarko will let that happen. So, but I don't think they're going to be elite, put it that way. I assume bottom 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, bottom 4.
Yeah. We're getting to tail end, 53 minutes, so we might have to speed things up. We'll go quickly for the remaining 6 teams. Port, is it his last hurrah? Is this the time? If there's no finals, if there's no prelim, I hesitate to say that. I know that's a kind of a trigger word for some Port Adelaide supporters. What are we talking with Port? What are we saying? Because to me, they're a very, very interesting team.
I don't think they're that interesting, and this is a statement. This is this one clip of the podcast, right? That it will turn on me 100%. I just think they're not going to be any better. I couldn't even I don't know where this instant improvement will come from, and they lost their chance. That group knows they lost their chance in a COVID year where they probably weren't even the best team half the time. I don't think they were standing out. they lost their chance. And now last year was just, it showed that. And they was really struggling to beat some pretty ordinary teams. And I don't think it was just an off season for them. Like, I think it just came onto them. And they knew it. They haven't really put anyone in new that apart from JHF, and I don't think he's going to improve him drastically. He's just pretty lazy off the ball. Great footballer in terms of his football ability, but off the ball, he's not showing he's going to do much for them. I just can't see them being any better. I think they're going to be competitive. They don't have a list that's going to get pumped every week, but where's the hunger now? Like, it's gone. Especially the way they lost those two prelims, like, they killed him. It really did kill him. So, yeah, no, I couldn't see Port being any better than last year. Can't see him getting worse, just not better.
Yeah, I would agree, but I do see them getting. I don't know. There's like I think they have to get better. I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink at this season. I think Hinkley's going to throw the kitchen sink at it, and I just think they're going to be. If they're going to finish, I mean, this will. I mean, obviously, this is going to wrap up what we're going to speak about. But to me, their ceiling is about seventh, maybe sixth at a push, but their floor could be significant. If they start the season like they did last year, I can see them downing tools. I can see them basically playing till he gets sacked. Not obviously wanting him to get sacked, but kind of that kind of playing out, and then it being a pretty poor season. Yeah, like I said, I reckon seventh till 13th. Yeah,
Um, yeah, I've got him 7th to 11th, so that. But looking at their first three games, Brisbane, Collingwood, and where are they on this one? And Adelaide. That could go that could turn sour very quickly.
it could. It could. I mean, it did last year. So yeah, it's gonna be
Yeah.
interesting. Let's wrap this up quickly. 5 teams, and we're touching on an hour. Richmond. I put the Last Dance, and I don't know why, because I don't know why I've done that, because I think maybe I'm just thinking very Dusty centric, like uh, probably not his final year, but definitely his final. He's definitely coming towards the end. Is like, can they make one more push? I know some people who have got them going deep, very deep.
I think they could, but we sort of thought that last year that's what would happen, that they'd push really deep and that they'd miss finals and they'd come back and push, like they'd just turn into a different beast. But a couple of injuries hit and it just didn't, like, they just could never really hit good form, and they did pick it up at the end of the season. I think they'll be competitive. They're one of those teams where I think even with a pretty average regular season, they'll definitely turn up come finals time and be a real threat.
Yeah, definitely. They could finish eighth, and I'd have them like third favourites to win the flag. They're one of those teams. As long as they're in, they're a threat. I think last year didn't. Last year was just a thing that happened. I don't think in terms of the final that they played. I don't think it's a moment of like, oh, like the world's ending, or they need to worry by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it was a thing that happened, and they think that they will get over, in my opinion. So it will be interesting. Yeah, any top 8 for me, top 6 probably, if I had to put, and that's being conservative.
Yeah, I agree. Top 6.
All right, let's go once again. We are doing a little bit of a seesaw from top to not bottom, but not quite as good. St Kilda, of course, what came out today is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. I think it is the funniest thing in the world. It's like that poor club, man. Nothing can go right for them, man. Like, yeah, it's stiff, but it's funny. Is he the boss? I don't really know. It is like the Giants. I don't know. I think I'm still scarred from when they beat us last year, and just that game annoyed me. But yeah, can they? I don't have them as a finals threat. I think some people might. Do you? Or where do you have them?
I couldn't see this season going well for them. But they're just such an odd team, and I have quite a lot of deal with them because my mum's St Kilda, so I'm at pretty much every St Kilda game and watching them in front of my own eyes, and you just think, like, when's it actually going to turn? Like, it just doesn't. You just never go there and think. I mean, it's so similar to Carlton, honestly. You go and you think, like, when's it actually going to happen, or
Yeah,
is it just like a matter of like let's just it's just a season's a season, right? You play 23 games and then call it a night. Like they're just such an odd team. Losing Max King for a bit doesn't help. They're
yeah, I forgot
just
about that. I did forget
losing
about
bits and pieces everywhere.
that. I know.
And if Ross comes in and I mean, he's either going to try and deploy that whole defensive, just real defensive tactics
Yeah,
game style that just really suits.
That could be really
Suits
boring.
him.
That could be really boring this year. I just realized that. That could be really
So
annoying to watch.
I just don't think that's the way to go with them. You need they need a game plan that just suits like both ends because at times things just clicked, and then when it wasn't, there was no like the midfield can just shut down within an instant with St Kilda. Like it goes from communication to just heads down and just like they've lost all effort, all motivation. So if you make it very defensive minded, well, as soon as that collapses, they've got nothing. Like there's nothing to hope for, like nothing to work towards. So look, just with the list at the moment and how down they are in players, yeah, I just couldn't see this being any better than last year.
So what? 12th, 11th max, you reckon?
I have them 10th to 13th.
Yeah. I would have them probably 11th to about 15th. But who knows? That could turn around and be elite because they were at the start of last year. They were similar to Carlton, weren't they? They started really well and then they fell off.
They were 4-1, and then they were 4-6 or something.
There you go. All right, let's finish things up. Let's wrap things up quickly. Sydney, it's very obvious, but is that grand final going to haunt them? Is that grand final going to cost them? I think it will to an extent. I don't see them falling off drastically, but I think with that young list being embarrassed on the biggest stage and being embarrassed on like it's your childhood dream to get to a grand final, and for so many of those players were so young and they realised it really early. Unless they've had that mental side of the game nailed on in preseason, I think it's going to hurt them. I don't think they're going to be like. I don't think they're going to like whatever happened to Adelaide. That obviously isn't going to happen to them. But I think they're going to be worse than what they were last year, but not by a considerable amount. I've still got them in the top 8.
Yeah, no, I can't see them dropping out of the 8. And I think we like when you look at teams who have been belted in grand finals, usually the list is pretty. I wouldn't say aged, but it's a list that was probably going to put everything into that one grand final. You could never guarantee it was going to come again, and that's when they fell off. Whereas this team is like there's too much youth for them to simply just like not have that motivation again.
Yeah,
and you'd think they would only get better just based off how much the youth improves. So, I mean, I guess you could have said that with the Bulldogs because they had quite a young list, and then they missed finals the year after they won it. So, I guess it depends on how the motivation is. But I think it is such a good thing that they have so many more years left in that playing group that there's not really anything to say, that was the one shot. So I expect them to do well.
Yeah, we're top 6.
Yes.
There you go. All right, 2 more clubs as we well and truly over an hour. West Coast, no COVID, no injuries, no worries. Is their list not as bad as what a lot of people think it is, or are they a rabble? Because I actually don't know. I have an idea, but I don't think they'll be as bad as what they were last year. But I also don't think they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be finals contenders for the most part of the season, anyway.
Yeah, they've got a. If I named you the top 5 players, you'd think, well, geez, like that's a team. But their youth is just very underexperienced, and it never seemed, even when some of those players came back, the chemistry was never really there. I just
Yeah,
think that there's sort of like a new West Coast and an old West Coast now. Like you can tell there's sort of just a new generation that's just they're playing there, but they're sort of waiting, and eventually it will rebrand. You know, they'll rebrand really. But I mean, they're not going to. They're always going to be competitive. West Coast always competitive. I don't know. I don't think they're going to get heaps better. I just think they'll challenge a lot of teams, give teams. They'll cause the upset here and there, especially in Perth, because playing West Coast in Perth is completely different. But I won't get into that. But yeah, look, I don't know where I put them. Uh, yeah, I've got them 12th to 15th.
yeah, I would tend to agree. Maybe a little bit lower than that, but yeah, that's around the ballpark. And I say no injuries and no COVID, but watch them. Watch them. I don't know, get 12 players pinged for COVID, and Luke Shuey does his hammy off the bone, and Elliot Yo, I don't know, gets his leg amputated. It's like, I don't know, just because of their luck is horrible. But obviously, we don't want that to happen. So fingers crossed for them that they can actually stay fit and have their full team on the park. Because what was it like? Wasn't it like 12 players or something out with COVID, and the top up players that played against North and all that stuff. And funnily enough, they still beat Collingwood. And yet, look what happened to them. This sport, man. This sport,
Mm.
honestly. All right, let's wrap things up. Let's wrap things up with the Dogs. And the reason why I put Lob to the rescue is because Jamara last year was a player that was so nearly there. I don't know. He didn't really like break through and become a prominent player, in my opinion. Darcy, is he playing forward? Is he playing back? I don't know. I think he was playing forward in practice games. Don't quote me on that. I didn't actually watch any of the practice games because I had better things to do. So if anything I've said in this video is false, on assumption of what happened in the practice games, that's why. And I just think the forward half. I know the back half of the back half of their game has let them down. Their defense has been quite poor, but I also think the front half as well. They haven't really been able to get a solid 60 goal a year forward. Norton, what happens with him, he knows. And I think Lob could potentially be that. The fact that he's 208 centimeters and not a ruckman should be a crime against football because you can't be that tall and not play the only position on the pitch in which the tall player plays. That is a crime against football. But anyway, if he kicks 60 goals, I don't really think they care.
Yeah, I don't know with the Dogs. The problem with having such a tall forward line is that they are not going to run back and defend, just purely because their height just doesn't allow for them to be that quick in defensive
Yeah.
transition. That's how a lot of teams broke them open, and that's their downfall. And like how you can't really improve that just based off the talent that's there. Yeah, I just don't know how you can make significant changes. And I think if your game plan's relying on those tools to click, well, what else have you got to fall on? Because they've got a great midfield. That midfield was great last year as well, but they're not very hard to break down. And I think you'll probably see it with Melbourne. Like that will be the first time I think Melbourne. I mean, not to jump ahead, but I don't think they'll be a challenge to Melbourne. I just don't think their game plan is very adaptable against a lot of teams. It's if they're dictating the game, they're on. Otherwise, I think opposition, if you've got some good coaches, shouldn't be too hard to stop their game.
There you go, throwing shade. But yeah, I don't know. The Dogs are weird. The Dogs are weird. Um, Once again, I think they've probably got the broadest range in terms of at their best, they're almost unstoppable, but at their worst, they are very, very easy to beat. If I had to say, they're similar to Collingwood in terms of I don't really want to give it away too early in terms of my predictions, but I would say probably fourth at a push. If they click and they're on from start to finish, I reckon they can make the top four. But I'm going to go as far down as like 13th, 12th.
Yeah,
Yourself?
I can agree. I happen between 8th and 11th.
There you go. Don't rate them as highly as I do. But there you go. All right. That is it. We got through all 16 or 18 and an hour and 10. So, you know what? Despite it being over an hour and despite I said to you, I reckon we shouldn't go over an hour. I reckon this is potentially a sign of things to come. Maybe we love the sound of our own voices quite clearly. But yes, that is all. Well, I do at least. I think that's quite obvious. um, there you go.
Uh,
I think we're done. So yes, thank you all very much for watching. Thank you all very much for tuning in. So next week we'll go through 18 to 1. Obviously not as in depth as what we did this week. Otherwise we'll literally be here forever. We'll go through 18 to 1, do all the Coleman Rising Star predictions, all that good stuff. So tune in next week for that. Make sure you subscribe to the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. I nearly misspoke then. But yeah, and we'll see you guys next week. Nathan, thank you very much for joining me. And next week, I reckon we're going to be even more controversial than what we were at times this week, which is something.
we're on.
We're on. Thank you for watching. See you guys next week. See you guys. Bye bye.